Welcome back to Hacker Hangouts. No music because it's not on this computer, but that's okay because I'm special and Gowry's special. And I don't know, this topic came up a couple days ago when Gowry kind of threw out, like, does our industry attract misfits, which I thought was interesting. And then I go, well, it's because we're all special. And it harkened back to something Jason Street said when I was interviewing him. And it was either he said it or one of us said something along the lines of, look, everyone's a unique snowflake at DEF CON in a blizzard of snowflakes. And it was like that self-deprecating, like, oh, I'm a unique snowflake. But I think that was part of the interesting comment was everyone is a very unique person in security because it's so big and you have a unique set of skill sets. And that's what we're going to talk about, like that, and probably how to stick out in the crowd. And I'm sure we get other places too. But hi, I've missed you. It's been far too long.
Yeah, a lot of life has been happening for the past few months. A lot of life. Some things we're not going to talk about here, but we will. It'll come on to the podcast eventually, I think. But yes, we have been very busy. I am close to finishing an album of Magic the Gathering music. So that's fun.
And you're actually getting like the vinyl pressed too, which I'm just like,
yeah, I like getting
works.
the vinyl pressed. I'm gonna get like 10 made. Like you can get custom vinyl made, and you can spend as much or as little as you want on it, right? So, yeah, I'm gonna get like 10 made just for funsies. I'm gonna get a nice little cover on it.
I'm curious, how does that process work? Is it as simple as like finding a vendor online, uploading your music, and say like order vinyls?
That's what it looks like. I don't really ask any other questions. I see the fact that somebody else has figured it out for me, and I don't care to figure the rest of that out because that is not my forte.
So let's jump into the question. You asked the question, which was, how did you phrase it?
So it was a little different than do we attract misfits, because we do attract misfits. That is like clear as day. And I think like the public perception is if you're in this industry and quote unquote, you're good, you're probably some form of misfit in life. Now that's not necessarily negative connotation, right? But like the idea is you have to be special. And I came around and I said, is that actually true? Like, I know that there are a lot of misfits, ourselves included, and we love them dearly. But is it true that you need to be special in some way to be part of the in crowd, which is a weird way of putting it because most of us have always been part of the out crowd, and now there is this in crowd, if you will, of hackers. You'll hear it often phrased in different ways, but one of the ways is like there are no hackers at DEF CON. Well, is that true? Or is that just us creating an in and an out crowd?
There's a lot. We need to define a couple terms because you also say special. And when you say special, my mind goes to specialization, which is, do you have to have a specialization in the industry? Which isn't what you're saying, but I do think it's an interesting thing.
Yeah, that's part of it.
How does specialization fit into an overall career path? I think you need to define misfit because I think there is a lot of ways to define misfit. And I have one way I want to pull a thread on, but I don't know. I know it's not how you're defining it. How are you defining misfit?
Social misfit in the sense of you do not fit in typical social, which is a little more complicated today than it was when I was a kid. But like when you're in high school, because everything simplifies back to high school, there's the jocks, there's the cheerleaders, there's the drama kids, there's the music kids, there's the, I don't know, there was an anime club when I was a kid, but like it's probably a lot more fractured and a lot less segregated in some sense, but it's probably still very cliquey because that's just how the children's be, right? And so I was a misfit.
Oh, go on. I was curious, where do you fit into this thing?
I did some drama, but like I wasn't a drama kid, right? I was a misfit in that whole environment. Like I did not fit in high school at all. Like I had my small group of friends, and that was it. And in some senses, Like I still struggle with that today of finding that community unless I have cultivated my own. And so I kind of have had to over the years recognize that like I'm never going to quote unquote fit in, so I'm going to make myself fit by cultivating my own environment. So that's kind of my definition of misfit is literally you do not fit in the general zeitgeist of quote unquote normal people,
I
quote
need
unquote,
another
or whatever
term
that
then,
means.
because I want a term, and misfits not the term. What would be, for lack of a better word, a lazy person? A,
Oh,
some because I
me.
do.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, no, I mean it like as a misfit, as someone who's just not a productive person. And I don't want it as I know the term you're going for with misfit, and I also like love the term misfits. I also like the show Misfits, so I don't want to use that term. But
Okay.
I'm looking for a man in finance. I'm looking for a word which is like, lazy. I want, because like here's the thing I have right when you asked me this
Do,
question.
do you want the word in terms of like how judgmental do you want it? Because there's
You can be
the
judgy as you
super
want. It's just the two of
well
us. What do I care?
well no, it's the super blatant like I got this a lot as a kid. I'm an underachiever in the sense that everyone can look at me and see my potential and I am
I
not.
let
Is
me.
that what you're looking for? Are you
I'll describe
capable
it.
but lazy?
I will describe it this way, which is I think there is a massive, massive problem in our industry, and I think its core of it is because our industry, unlike many, many, many others, ineptitude can completely thrive. And in some ways, I think it
That's true.
completely wrecks so much of our industry, especially in consultants, I'd say, because you can be completely inept, and thrive in this industry as a penetration tester. Oh, I'm a penetration tester. I break into networks, and you have no idea what you're doing, and you sit in your office all day for a pen test, and you do nothing. You ping servers. You don't like. You have no idea what you're doing. At the end of the test, you deliver. Oh, I didn't find anything. They're 100% secure. In that thrives because in some ways that's what the client wants to hear. That
Yeah.
whether you're in a big enterprise, they want to know they're secure. So, and in some ways, if you're really good and and there's, I mean, I think you can't fabricate vulnerabilities, but if you're really good and you find vulnerabilities, this creates friction for the team in some ways. So you're almost rewarded for your ineptitude. Not even, forget pen testing. SOC analyst. You're there to discover someone in the network. You're looking at events.
Yeah.
You spend your entire day looking at it. I didn't find anything. Like, there's no one on the network. And there's so many excuses in the network. Right? There's so many excuses on that front. You're like, oh, well, it was you can use BS language. You can go, oh, it's a very sophisticated attack. Our sensors didn't pick it up. So I'm designing new like sensors. I'm designing a new schema. I'm designing a new
Yeah.
threat intel. I'm pulling on a new threat intel feed. You can use so many terms that mean absolutely nothing and thrive in this industry.
So how does that fit in with the misfits? Because you
I'm
started on the
wondering
misfits.
because I think when you said does our field attract misfits, or do you need to be a misfit to be successful? I really want to take these terms and split them because
Okay.
I think there's this giant push. Cybersecurity is the new hotness. If
No,
you're
cybersecurity is the old hotness
it's
now.
the old
AI
hotness,
is
but I
the
mean,
new
I mean,
hotness.
like if you're in school, there's not. But I mean, I would almost say like when I first went to college, there's no such thing as network security. There's computer science. Network security was
Oh, it's
just becoming a thing. In AI, just becoming a degree field, maybe. Like it's just they're
not
starting to
even.
introduce curriculum, but the curriculum is going to be complete crap. Just like when network security became a thing, there was no curriculum because there was too much money to be made in the industry, and the people who were teaching it either were super super passionate and amazing teachers, or failed in the industry, and that's why they're teaching. Like you had to do extreme opposites. You didn't really have a mediocre teacher in it. But I think when you're in high school and you were looking to say like, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing," go into IT. And then IT became a little poo-pooed because it was like Geek Squad at Best Buy,
Yeah,
and people
yeah.
were like, "I want to be IT." So, Well, go into security. And then this whole understanding started happening was I don't have to work all that hard. And you're almost in some ways, again, punished for working hard in an
Incentivized.
enterprise.
I I think that's normal though. Like I've said this before, and we'll circle back around on Misfit, but I've said this before. One of the most effective ways to get what you want in a business environment is to be able to walk in the door and say, I'm about to create a problem, but I am also going to hand you the answer. All you have to do is sign here, or all you have to do is approve me to do this, or all you have to do is here's a small task, give me authority, right? And in some senses, that's exactly what everyone wants. It is every day you go to the work, every day you go to work, it's all problems being presented to you. And the best possible scenario is people present you problems and you say yes, no, and someone else deals with it. Right.
Mhm.
So I don't see this as all that different than any other form of work. And like, granted, I'm now in software development more than I am on the security side. And it's not all that different. Like, you can be a very incompetent developer and be very well paid, despite the fact. It's just a matter of value, right? Like I hate to use the word incompetent because that's not quite
No, but
the way I want to phrase it. But yeah,
my argument though, it's very easily discovered. Like you're not pushing that many lines of code. And again, just because you're
that's
pushing
true.
more lines doesn't mean you're a good developer. I get it. But at a certain point, you're putting in X number of PRs. You're delivering X number of features.
Yeah.
You're going to the sprint cycle and you're completing a story or an epic.
Well,
Like,
we've talked about this as an analyst in any analysis position. You can present complete garbage, and the person talking to you, if they are quote unquote uninitiated, aka aren't an analyst themselves, don't really have a good way of validating your work. They have to take your word for it at some point. And that is that relationship is very easy to take advantage of. Not that I've done it, just to be clear, but it is very easy to take advantage of. And that will eventually come out because that,
oh, it does.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, that house of cards will eventually fall on you when an expert inevitably walks in the room and starts asking hard questions, right? An expert, the expert hiding in the bushes that is always waiting to call you out, right? So I don't know. I don't see this as I fail to see the connection back to Misfit and the topic itself.
So I think then you allow inaptitude to survive, but look what you're saying. It gets found out eventually, but it doesn't matter because people look for experience when you apply for a job and you have 6 months of experience and you jump. And it's normal in our field to jump and jump and jump. So I do think like that old adage of like don't jump too many times starts coming out for those analyst positions. Less so, I think, when you're carry yourself well, where if you're knowledgeable and able to talk about it, no one cares what your previous experience is. As far as like if you've skipped jobs a lot,
Yeah.
So that's my that. Before we jump off this one, am I being like high and mighty, going, oh, this is a unique problem to our industry? But when I thought about it last night, there's not many other. There are most analyst positions have it, but I do think there's a lot of verticals within our industry which doesn't work out. Let's like a home inspector. You can be a home inspector and kind of be a cruddy one and find some things, but for the most part, be lazy.
It's an analysis position.
It's an analysis position, but I think there's a lot of positions
any
within
job
security.
Yeah. And that's maybe a critical assessment. Like almost every position in cybersecurity in particular requires some form of magical analytical ability that that is very, and we've talked about this, that is very difficult to teach. And how you teach that is, beyond me. I'm not a teacher, not, I have it and I can sit down and I can work through puzzles, but like, how do you cultivate that? I don't know. And so maybe you're right in the sense that cybersecurity is maybe flooded more with that than other fields. But I think the core of it is really any job that depends on some form of magical analytical ability to be good and then has that trust relationship with whoever you're delivering the product to is subject to this kind of this kind of environment.
So let's flip to the other side of the question, which was misfits. We'll say the derelicts of our society. No, like the oddballs. Does our field attract them?
Yes,
What's your
like
answer?
that's unequivocally yes, for sure. And it's not hard. What's really interesting to me is I would say if you go to DEF CON, you're not getting a good snapshot of the industry. You are getting a snapshot of the industry, but you have to remember that there's a selection bias. You have the intersection of oddballs who are also willing to be in public and willingly show up at DEF CON. And there is that tension of like, oh, I'm gonna go, but I'm gonna leave all my stuff and I'm gonna try and be anonymous. And like there's a little enticement there to play that, spy versus spy game at first, and then you show up and you realize it's hacker summer camp and you're like, oh fuck, I'm gonna go play Jeopardy. Like there is a little bit of that. But there is definitely a large portion of the industry that just does not go to DEF CON. And they are, I would say, also some level of misfits, but there's a lot of traditionally normal people in the cybersecurity industry that just have no interest to go to that microcosm of culture, if you will. So I guess the question is we know that things like cybersecurity attract misfits. I think the core question is, are we special? No. I mean, my wife says yes, but the core question is, do you have to be a misfit to be good at this job?
So lots to piece out. One of the things you said is like I remember walking through the red team at GE, and it was pretty funny because I'm like, one of these things is not like the rest because you go through the building and then you walk through the red team and you're like, these people are these are my people. But it's the blue hair and stuff like that. I mean, again, stereotypical, but I still remember two people with blue hair and one person with red hair, and it stood out. And I think in some ways it's allowed to exist. Like cybersecurity people are weird. Like our industry and hackers in general are weird. A lot of them. And I think there's not even like, oh, need to stand out. We just don't care anymore. And I think with that comes a little level of you're allowed to be weird. It's almost like you've mentioned it when you've given talks, you've worn a kilt in a professional environment because it's like, oh, this person's professional, but they're a little weird. They're a little weird. And I think that's
Yeah.
needed in some ways. Even in the
I
consulting space, it's rewarded in some ways. They're very
No, it
professional.
absolutely is.
A little
Like
weird.
the the context there is I finally, I don't know, a decade ago decided to just start wearing kilts in public because it doesn't matter. Like I think that one of the key things is once you are initiated, quote unquote, into cybersecurity, one of the things you learn is that the systems we have built, computer systems that we have built, are are ruled by arbitrary rules that we have put in place. Like every time you learn how to do something, you learn later that that's not an actual rule you have to follow. You can break it, and that trail of breaking things never ends. Like you learn, like I always say this in undergrad, you learn in one class a bunch of fundamentals, and then in the next class the teacher goes, remember all that stuff we just taught you? It was all a lie, right? And I'm going to show you how to break it. And and then once you go through that process enough times, you realize that all of these rules are arbitrary and capricious. And so why does it matter if I wear pants or a kilt? Right. And so that's that mindset you cultivate. And one of the reasons why I started doing that in the business sense is because we would have, CEOs, admirals, generals, high level government officials come in, and I recognize that they're all relatively quote unquote stereotypical normal people. They were in the jocks, they were in the, they were these kind of folks. And when they see someone in a suit, they instantly identify that person as like them. When they see a guy in a kilt and that person starts talking about cybersecurity, they instantly defer to you as you must be an expert because the business people have allowed you to wear that. And so there's a little bit of exploiting the perception, right? And so I've talked about this before. So yeah, you're right, and I think that comes from learning that the rules we've set up are largely arbitrary, and I think that is how you cultivate a misfit. but what about the industry? What about the topic? What about the things we do attracts misfits? And like I said, do you have to be a misfit to be good at those things? I know it's a loaded question, and I know the answer to that. The answer is no. You don't have to be a misfit to be good at those things.
No, I'm gonna actually argue that. Because as you were talking, this is a big one. Look at, again, I'm going to convince you here. I'm going to try and convince you. Look at any other industry in which, weirdness. I'm going to just say weirdness is the term I'm going to use. It's just a weirdness. We're all a little weird. We're all a little special.
I mean, you're more than a little, but.
So, I just, by the way, I'm watching myself right here with you next to me, like on the screen right here. And I love the fact that I see all my Muppets in the background. Yeah. Just, it makes me happy.
I was telling somebody about your Muppets the other day.
It's like, oh, they're so good. The guy who made them, so good. But look at the other industries where you have just a little bit of weirdness. And I would say just a little bit of weirdness and it gains trust. If I go to a barbershop and I see a guy with a big stash and it's like purple and it's like super curly, I go, that is the guy who I would trust to do my beard. Now, I don't go, I do my beard myself. But you go, I would trust this person. I see Mar at DEF CON who does all the art and I want to get art for my channel. I go, that person, a little bit weird. I like that. She exudes the definition of being an artist. So I think there's art and there's other pieces where art really, really attracts. I wouldn't say that attracts weird people. It's that the little bit of weirdness is their own uniqueness personified out through their being. Ooh, that sounds fun. But where it goes, when you have that inside of you, it starts leaking out, whether it's through what you wear, how you act, through this. And then that gets poured into what you do. So I think I would argue that cybersecurity, this field, requires a whole lot of art and a whole lot less of analytical, like math. If it's just math and art, if that's how we're going to compare it, where it's literature versus science, is I think there's a lot more art in our field than it appears from the outside. And the people who do so well in our field that stand out, who appear to be a misfit, who extrude misfits, is because their being inside is that creativity is now flowing out, and they either flow it out into their art, their work, their hacking, their code, their ideas, their innovation, whatever it is. I think it's in them. It's part of them. This is like, we've had this conversation on what is a hacker. And I argue it's what you do and whatnot, but we've always asked this question of, are you a hacker or is it a thing you do? Do you do that thing, therefore you are a hacker, or you are a hacker and therefore you hack things?
So I want to point out, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no. And so I think this is the misfitism, which thrives in our industry, is on the good side, is someone who has that at their very being and it's leaking out in a variety of different ways.
So this is what I want to challenge you on. Is that the case, or have we created an in-group where we accept people as hackers, gatekeeping the phrase hacker or, what have you, to mean that? And anyone who doesn't conform to that GUI definition of hacker isn't a hacker, or isn't a good one, or is going to be a lesser, right? Like, this is what I'm trying to I'm trying to challenge that perception of, I show up at DEF CON and I look around and I go, these are my people. And then sometimes I'll hear people say, DEF CON's changed, the culture's changed. This has become more of a conference than a hacker conference, and they try to gatekeep. And I'm kind of challenging, like, is being a misfit in this sense really a prerequisite to be some definition of a hacker? And I'm trying to challenge myself on that perception or that perspective. And I hear a lot of that coming from you. And so I want to push that button and say, like, okay, you've just defined that. Now, can you argue against it?
Oh, I'd actually say it this way. It's like, I have far gotten over the point of looking at anyone and saying, like, you go to DEF CON, you have a conversation with anyone. It's very interesting when you come across the arrogant jerk at DEF CON, because I can immediately, and I make very fast judgments. I go, I don't want to be around this person.
Me all day. So,
but I mean, you have this arrogant jerk who's like, oh, I am very proficient in what I do. I have many awards on my table. I've done all of these things. And I found very quickly at DEF CON in this industry, it's like, whether it's DEF CON or in this industry, it's like, you can't make assumptions on anyone's skill set.
Yeah.
My whole screen just flashed. You cannot make assessments on anyone's understanding within this field, because I can talk to you and people go, oh, well, he seems like he knows what he's talking about, not realizing that, like, no, you understand the deep magic of kernel development and have upstream kernel patches, which most people in the entire world have on their systems. Like, that is you can't go in with a chip on your shoulder. So I think when you go back, is like, I think going back to you are a unique snowflake in a blizzard of snowflakes, because that specialization that you have is unique to you. Now, as far as like gatekeeping, maybe I'm getting old. I don't care. I don't care what other people are doing. I don't really care. I have enough of my own stuff to care about gatekeeping, whether someone calls themselves a hacker. And the truth is using your definition that you've said many moons ago was the moment you pick up the moment you pick up a piano, the moment you pick up a guitar, the moment you start playing, you're
walking down the street carrying a piano. Yeah.
In my mind, I crossed both of them. The moment you start playing a guitar, you're a guitarist. The moment you touch a keyboard and dedicate yourself to the pursuit of a thing, you're a hacker. I don't really care whether you call yourself a hacker. I honestly don't. Because I am in my own world right now.
It's not the definition. It's not the persona that we are that I am trying to attack here. It's not the perception of are we judging? That's not what this is more of a philosophical question, right? And I think part of this is people on the outside have this perception of, if I'm not special in some way. And I'm totally guilty of this thinking, and I'll use an example of this. But if I'm not special in some way, then I won't thrive in this environment, because when they're on the outside looking in, you see all of this wonder of, this person is special. They're expressing themselves that way, and this is where they've specialized, and they're an expert in this space. And then the more you learn over time, the more you realize, like, they're bumbling through it like everyone else. And they've just bumbled into a random set of things that another person hasn't cobbled together that exact perspective, right? But when you're on the outside, you have this perspective of, oh, well, I don't wear kilts. I don't have an interest wearing kilt. I don't dye my hair this. I don't I don't do all of those things. Sorry. And you get this perception of, well, if I don't do those things, then this is not the place for me. Sorry, I've been sick lately, and I'm just getting over
good.
it. So apologize for the coughs. And I guess it's not that I worry that has become too solidified in the zeitgeist, but it is something that I do think about when I talk to folks that have this perception that hackers aren't normal. Because to me, like, they're utterly normal. Like, once you get past the blue hair, once you get past the kilts, once you get past all of those special things and you start making friends, they have kids, they have wives, they have lives, they're dealing with all the same stuff that everyone else is dealing with. And this is just one of their ways of keeping their life interesting. And I've said this before, I actually hate the idea that, those high level officials walk in and they look at me wearing a kilt and they say, oh, that one must be good. I'm exploiting them in that exchange, right? Like I actually, that is a social exploit that I am using to gain traction. And I actually dislike that. But I still use it, in part because I've said this before. One of the reasons why I wear a kilt is because when you're in public and you're the guy wearing a kilt, it makes it easier for other people to start the conversation with you because they think you're wearing the kilt, therefore you must be social, and it gives them permission to engage because you've put something out for other people to interact with, which takes a huge load off my shoulders because I don't want to initiate anything with anyone, but like that makes my life a lot more boring, right? So that is kind of like a social exploit, right? But I actually really dislike that this perception exists that not being normal equals better at hacking, even if it's true in some sense, I guess. But I don't know that it is.
So there's two things I'm going to mention here. One, I'm actually going to push pretty hard on one. No, you're not normal.
Okay.
You're not normal. You're normal. You're normal. Like you get family and everything. Normal things happen. No, you've been in the ecosystem, and here's why. Most of cybersecurity, you cannot be normal. You're not a normal person. You watching right now, you're not a normal person because day in and day out, you come to work to roll your face across the keyboard repeatedly for hours on end. And then after hours of doing that, you come up with nothing. And then you come up with something which would have taken 5 seconds, and somehow that solves the problem. And you have to figure out at the end of the day to rationalize the 6 hours of bashing your face against the keyboard to finally figure something out. That's not normal in an industry. That's not normal in a person. You again, pen testing, whether, again, I can talk about in my realm of expertise, whether it's doing programming or exploiting or pen testing, or if you go down the SOC analyst route, things like that, you spend a vast majority of your time completely and utterly failing. And that is your job. Your job is to fail professionally. This is a whole nother discussion on mental health in our industry specifically. But
that's more science in general. Your job in science is to fail professionally.
It's true, but we can argue whether or not that's actually hacking in a certain sense. Like I would almost argue as like you are a professional hacker if your job is to fail professionally and learn through your series of failures. And I understand this is how most people learn. You learn through a series of failures. But I mean, like, it feels like that ratio a little bit different in our industry. And then
how would you describe yourself? I would describe myself as a series of failures. Sorry, go ahead.
That's one. The other one, as far as like, are you exploiting it? Like something which it turns my stomach. Like we've talked about that. Ooh, black badge, toot toot. I have 3 black badges, toot toot. Like it upsets me because you know my full story of my black badges. Like I feel like the biggest imposter syndrome where I'm like, I exploited the system in order to figure out a way of getting this and that. And like all of that being said, woo, black badge, all of that, 3 of them. I'm a consultant. Part of my job is to go up there and like, ooh, flex, like, ooh, I'm so strong. But is when you're meeting a new client, every once in a while, you get the person on the other end of the call who's like, I am sophisticated IT. I will make sure they know what they're doing. And then you have to do this weird like flex battle back and forth to show them like, I need to show them I know what I'm talking about, but not so much where I'm like being a douche. And there's a weird balance there. Some of that can be overcome by, as you say, exploiting your weirdness. My weirdness is the fact that I love puzzles and I love crypto and I love what I do. I love cybersecurity. So you can exploit that to kind of like demonstrate. This is how you demonstrate to the rest of the herd that you're one of the herd,
Well, this is leveraging, right? You're
and this is
leveraging those things. Yeah.
leveraging those things. So I think that's when it becomes the difference between, do I need those things to be part of the collective, or do I have those things and I'm just letting those things fall out? I do think I would
It's such
like
an
to
interesting
believe,
way of putting it. Go ahead.
I would like to believe one of the reasons this is such a romantic thought, but one of the things that DEF CON does is it lets you embrace your weirdness, and you might come there being a normie, but you leave there with a kilt. Like, I cannot imagine how many kilt wearers have come from DEF CON, because they go there, you see the utility kilt that Gator is wearing, and go, I kind of want one of those. I could make use of one of those, and you go buy one. You see the person at the think of Mohawk Con. Like, I've never thought about having a mohawk, but how many people go to DEF CON with a normal haircut and come out with a mohawk?
I want to see you glue one on.
I
I'm
would
curious what.
This
curious
is so
what
like,
you look
no,
like.
hold on. You're hitting such a sore point for me. You have no idea. So like for years, I wanted a mohawk. I'm like, I want a mohawk. I so want a mohawk. But like, I was either in professional General Electric. I was at all the 3-letter, doing work for the DOD, FAA, Department of Education, DOD, all of those things. And you can't have that. And then I went into consulting. And I love consulting. I absolutely love it. But I was new in my career, so I didn't want to like rock a mohawk going into like because a lot of our clients were like hedge funds, like giant hedge funds. Can't go into BlackRock like sporting a mohawk. So now I finally own my own company. I am going to have a mohawk, and I have no hair. Please, I beg of you. I have no hair to be able to do a mohawk, and it upsets me. Such a primal level. You're hitting that moment. I thank you for that. And you just strut yourself. All your hair. You could have a mohawk. Why don't you do a mohawk?
I did. I was trying to pull up the. It's funny when you're in the military, you're not allowed to have fattish haircuts, unless you are on leave for 2 weeks and nowhere near your home base, and you decide to get a mohawk. And I did that for 2 weeks. I went out. Is when I was stationed in Maryland. I took 2 weeks off and I went to Hawaii and just crashed at a friend's house because that's where I was stationed previously. And the day I got there, I went to a haircuttery or whatever, and I said, "Give me a mohawk." I was like, "No, I mean, shave this thing down. Give me a mohawk." And they were like, "Are you sure?" What's really funny? When I got back, I had to even it out, so I evened it out. But the sun had bleached the mohawk portion lighter color, so the result of it was you could still see the outline of it for like weeks. Weeks you could still see that I had a mohawk, and one of the junior sailors thought that was okay and went out and got a faux hawk and came to work with it, and people were like, "Bro, you can't do that. Greg's just an idiot and we're trying to deal with it. You can't do that. You gotta go get your haircut." And I had to get. I think I gave him money to go get his haircut. I was like, "This one's on me," but yeah, I gotta go.
So
I gotta find that picture. I have the picture somewhere.
So that's my story. So no, I cannot grow a mohawk. I don't grow enough hair.
I just gotta glue one on.
That's true. I still think the most epic mohawk I've ever seen was that like DEF CON like 2021? Where Gulo had long hair, hair, and he had a mohawk, which was probably the biggest one I've seen there. But it was like, and he's like, what is he, 6'4", something like that? I don't know how tall he is. He's like 6'4". He's tall, 6'5", and that plus like a 1.5 foot mohawk. He couldn't even make it through most doorways. Oh, it was great. So like, I think there's that. I do want to spin over to specialization, which is, do you need a specialization in our industry to stand out?
Well, to stand out to stand out, yes. Unless you intend to I think, be more of a management or a business runner, or be, like, I guess you would call that your specialization if you are the meta puzzle piece person. My dog just came in. He's a big flump. Um, but I think generally, like, it's not a matter of need. You will have a specialization in some sense, even if you are an everything doer. That dabbling in everything is kind of your specialization. The a trench a mile wide and an inch deep. I think your specialization in that case is the ability to very rapidly pick up surface skills and use them. And I think that is a specialist position for sure. But then most people, like, I have a lot of background in virtual machine management development, like the development of that. I fell into that. It's not like I chose it, but like the opportunity was made available to me, and then I became specialized in it. So I think you naturally become specialized in this industry if you are going to stick with it.
Yeah,
Hey, Gator.
hey, Getter. Do you think would it be good advice for someone coming into the industry to say you should go pick a specialization and dive
No,
into that?
no, absolutely not. And I think this I came around to having a different opinion on degrees after I did my degree. Before I did my degree, I thought it was bullshit, checking a box, all of these things. And then someone finally, especially because I knew what I wanted to do, and that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to do the cybersecurity stuff. I wanted to get to those things. And someone said to me, actually, a degree it's about getting some amount of specialist training, some amount, but it's also important to be enriched more generally on other topics, because you don't know when that information is going to help you, right? And one of the examples that I would use is my last job. We were trying to decide whether or not a product was a good idea, and technically I could execute this, but there was a question as to whether or not it was financially feasible to do so, and we had to do some complex math to figure out whether or not the rack space that this product would take up was worth the physical space in the rack compared to just putting another server in the rack. And when we broke the problem out, I was able to look at this and go, oh, fuck, this is a calculus problem. Like, this is a maximization, like a classic maximization problem in calculus. Can I do it? No. But I see the problem for what it is, and the only reason I saw the problem for what it is because I had taken calculus, right? And so now I can go find the person who knows how to do this and help them break down the problem. So I think it is very important early on to not specialize until you find a thing. Like, you can have a thing that you specialize in, that's fine, but don't dump all of your time into that. Go play music, go take a calculus course, go do these other things, because you're never going to know when those other things come in handy. I say it this way: the best class I ever took was 3 years of acting training. That allowed me to become socially normal, for some definition of normal.
Yeah, I think in that sense, like that is what I think most people lack in the industry, is the ability to explain complicated technical problems in layman terms. I think communication in general too. I think even high level understanding of, again, we go back to the analyst problem, high level understanding of very, even like, probably I would even say abstracting it up to a C level. This was something which was super interesting to me that I did not understand. Yeah, I didn't understand when I was at General Electric. I thought I understood, where I was like, this is what's important. This type of vulnerability, and we need to record on these metrics and whatnot. And it was like, at a certain level, you get 30 minutes with the CEO, like a quarter. They have so much on their plate. Like, you get 30 minutes. What's important? Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? Do we need money? Like, what is the overall risk score for everything? Like, which us as a security person, be like, it's a made up number. That's fine. It's as long as it's a made up number that we can duplicate multiple times and track over time, it's probably a decent number. And I think it's like the ability to abstract all the way up is just super lacking in our industry. I actually think like there's a remarkably number of talented individuals who are in our industry who will probably never move out of where they are. And I think it's to our detriment because we understand there's no growth pattern for a technical individual at most companies. It's always move up to management, move up, lead people. And most people in our industry, this is like, I think, something very unique to our industry. Again, everyone's special. In our industry, majority don't want to be people leaders. They don't want to move out of our industry. It was so weird. I remember at General Electric, they had the IMLP program, like the something leadership, blah, blah. It was like their leadership track. And people went into it. And then part of that was every 3 months, they'd rotate you around the company. And they got 0 people in cybersecurity signed up for the program. Why? Because no one wanted to leave cybersecurity. No one wanted to leave cybersecurity and go to another division of the company. And I think spinning all the way back to specialization, I think what you find in this industry is there's no such thing as specialization. Like, truthfully, because even like, let's take you, for example. You do kernel development. Is there someone who's more specialized farther down where they specialize in driver development of the kernel? They specialize in memory management.
It's more special than that. Like,
so go farther. Give me an example.
It's more like you are specialized in this 3 or 4 specific files in the kernel that you understand better than everyone else. Oh, by the way, there's 30,000 files, or whatever. There's some absurd number of files. So
at a certain point, I would say, even if you're specialized, like I am a pen tester. That's not specialized. You can go down. You can be a web pen tester. Well, that's BS too. Because even if you're a web pen tester, do you do back end or front end? Like, do you do both? Do you do API? Do you focus on API? Oh yeah, I focus on API. Okay, well, what type of API? Serverless, Docker. Oh, it's containerization of an API. Is it a distributed model? That you have multiple for each client? Are they ephemeral? Are they there? Like, all of these little weird pieces, like, and you could specialize and specialize and specialize, and all of it would, the reason you would specialize is based on some sort of need. And I think that is one of the things that make you really good, is building your skill set based on some need. Again, I've said this before. I'm not Kevin Costner. This is not Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will not come. Like, don't develop skills. Because if you develop the skills and go, okay, I have these skills, maybe there'll be a job out there for me. You won't be successful versus this is the thing that here's the need. I'm going to build my skills around that need.
I mean, I can't argue with that too much. This is what I said earlier, which is like you be specialized by nature of having to execute a job and just having to learn a specific set of skills. And then all of a sudden you turn around and someone else points to you and goes, "They're the expert," and you're like, "What the hell are you talking about? I don't know what I'm doing." Please don't. Oh God. But no, like that's just how it works. That's how I've learned. But like, I guess like we started this conversation asking the question whether or not you have to be a misfit to be in or be good at cybersecurity, or if we self-select for misfits. And what does that mean if we self-select for misfits? And I say we, like I'm speaking for the entire cybersecurity industry, which I'm not. But you and I have had this conversation of, DEF CON being the land of misfit toys. And like there's obviously a self-selection bias in that sense. And I wonder how much of a barrier that creates over time for people who don't feel like misfits, who otherwise would be perfectly good at the job.
I don't think your feelings have anything to do if you're a misfit or not. You might feel you're not a misfit, or like I feel like I don't belong in this industry. Well, no one feels like they belong anywhere. Like we have rampant imposter syndrome. We're all imposters. I think what you find, I mean, heck, you're saying like, do we gatekeep? I can actually say I absolutely gatekeep like my business when I'm hiring someone.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Like you want to get hired by a company, or at least like if you have any semblance of a good person who's interviewing you, Like they want to hear your passion. Like when you've interviewed someone, there is a very big difference between I know all of the things you're asking for, and I know this, this, and this. But my gosh, here's the thing. Here's the project I was working on, which works on this thing. Like I just remember someone talking to me about like we started talking about like what are you passionate about? What are you enjoying? Like oh, I started this home lab project where I wanted to make a recipe database for my family and blah blah blah, and they start going off on this whole thing. I'm like, that's weird. Most people, they don't see that as weird. No normal person sits in their basement and says, you know what I want to build? A recipe database for my family to be able to share recipes.
You know what though? I got to push back on that. I think that's utterly normal. I think you're like, oh, no normal person does that, but I think the content of that project is what makes it not normal. I think if you go look at an average person, they have projects like that just sound more normal than that specific one. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I had been thinking about this the other day. I was like, it'd be really like we have a whiteboard down next to our chest freezer that has a tally of everything in there, so we kind of have a visual idea of what's in there. And I was like, it'd be really nice if I just had like a tablet here that let us do that cleanly, so that if it gets wiped away, I don't have to go back through it. Like I have some record of it. I think like that intuition to do those things is like utterly normal. Like whether or not you execute, that's a whole different question. But like I think the average person has a lot of those things in their life.
Sure. Like I say sure. I think I do think that you have the type of personality who wants to solve problems and sees the problems constantly, and hack together a solution.
I guess
I don't
that's
know, like,
a good maybe I'm biased in that sense. Like I never execute on these things, but I have all of these wanting to do those things.
I think though, like standing out during an interview, going back to gatekeeping's a weird term. We'll say like the people who stand out are the people who show off their misfitism, their weirdness, because it makes you stand out from a crowd. Now, I think the difference here is whether you're, would you say, not exploiting it, whether you're amplifying that up to get that benefit or not. But I would say like there's a very different persona you get from someone who, we'll call it misfit passion. I mean, I think in some ways misfitism is just going to be someone who's super passionate about something. I go back to you have this passion deep in your core and it's now personifying out of yourself. That sounds so ridiculous, but you see it all the time in like things like artists. They're passionate about their art. They have it inside of them. They want to get it out of them onto the piece of paper. And some of that comes out through them. I think it's the same thing with hacking is you have this thing inside of you that needs to get out, whether it's through breaking something, making something, programming something, whatever. And it starts personifying in a variety of weird ways, whether it's a weird mustache, a full head of hair, and a kilt. I think there's a lot of ways it gets personified.
So this has been a messy, philosophical, semi-professional, building conversation. How we want to wrap up today?
I mean, one of the things I think Gator just mentioned was self-promotion is hard. I don't know why. By the way, my screen is randomly flashing at me, so I'm keep like looking over here. I don't know what's happening. Did I just lose everyone?
No, you're still here.
Oh yeah, but the screen froze. Did the whole?
You're good. You're good. Everything's
okay.
Just act like everything is normal.
I'm gonna act like everything's normal. I am gonna check the stream really quick because I do want to make sure it's actually streaming because this isn't moving for whatever reason.
Well,
and I appreciate that. Oh no, it's still working. It's just me who's frozen. Yeah. That's fantastic. I think that this whole idea of self-promotion is hard. I think it's very, very hard to understand self-promotion in this industry of whether or not, at what point do I become just like, toot, like I have 3 black badges versus this is a thing. I think it all depends on context. I think self-promotion and learning what to self-promote, in learning your story of how you're going to say it, that takes that takes effort. I think that takes years, I would say, and it's something you build up when you're introducing yourself to people. I don't know. How do you introduce yourself to people, Gowrie?
Hi, I'm Greg. That's it.
Super weird.
That's how I introduced myself to people. I
That's
I
it.
let them drive. Actually, you know what's funny? I've so if you guys didn't know, my name is Greg, not Gowrie. But yeah, no, I go by Gowrie normally for the people who know me closely. But it's been really fun starting a new job because I don't introduce myself by my name normally. And I let people always ask the question, do you go by Greg or Gregory? And I have started saying, I make other people choose to torture them.
Oh goodness. I fixed it. Fantastic.
uh, so I don't know if you caught that, but I make other, I inevitably get the question, do you go by Greg or Gregory? And I have started responding with, I make other people choose to torture them. And it has been my favorite thing about starting a new job is because it is torturous. Like you respond to people with that, and they're like, I don't know how to process this. What if I get it wrong? And like
Oh,
what
yeah.
I'm really saying is there is no wrong answer. Just call me whatever you want. If you ask me what you should call me, I'm gonna probably tell you Gowrie because I'm so used to hearing it now.
Oh,
Um,
I
and then
I
and then
think
they get confused that I want to be called by a handle, which is like hilarious because I'm not in the cybersecurity space.
I think one of the more interesting ways I've had to introduce myself at a so big group of people. Everyone else is doing intros. Hi, my name is Bob. Hi, my name is Greg. Like it felt really weird. So I raised my hand and go, does everyone know what a urinal cake is? And everyone looks over and they're like, what? I go, I'm wondering because it's weird that it seems like it's split between male and female don't understand what a urinal cake is. And I'm just gauging. And immediately everyone looks at me. I'm like, okay, like here's why I ask. And then I just jump into the story. And it's great because it talks about hacker mindset and things like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
went to the urinal cake story. And it's like the best way to introduce yourself. So that is my parting shot. If you need to introduce yourself to anyone, just ask them, does everyone know what a urinal cake is? Because you need to have this context for the next story to make any sense.
I don't need to do that because you'll do it for me. So
With that, I think that's the parting shot. And like as far as misfits go, I guess the parting thought on it is like, no, I think the core I probably got out of this conversation is this whole idea of I think hacking and cybersecurity fits very much into art. I think you get that personification of the artist of the art out through the artist. I think you get the same thing with hackers is you get that the hacker inside you starts getting personified through yourself because of your passion through it. So that might be high and mighty, but it sure sounds nice.
I'll to my chagrin, I'll quote Steve Jobs, who I don't like, and I think he's been held up some kind of whatever. We'll just leave that alone. But he said, if if these people were not engineers, talking about his employees and people in the tech industry, they would be artists. And I hope he stole that from somebody else, and I can dig up who he stole that from. But I think that's totally true. I think a lot of people in the industry, if computers didn't exist, they would be artists in some way, shape, or form, which is not, well, I don't know. Art is utterly normal. Like everyone has some level of art in their life, whether they recognize it or not. But yeah.
With that, I think that's a great place to end it. Thanks for watching and hack on.